Expand your mind and enrich your world. It's time for another outstanding podcast from ICRT.
Hello and welcome to another podcast edition of Taiwan Talk. I'm Keith Manconi. Long-distance fishing is a valuable industry for Taiwan. In fact, government estimates put the annual haul at 45 billion NT. But there is growing concern that all these far-flung vessels are basically out of control, and that they're ignoring laws on what kind of fish they can catch, and as a result, causing significant damage to the ocean's ecosystem. It's to the point now that Taiwan is facing a possible trade sanction from the EU over these fishing practices, and the government has responded by pledging to stiffen penalties for illegal catches. But international environmental group Greenpeace is warning that the government may not be able to move fast enough to make the needed changes. To tell us a little bit more about what's going on out on the high seas, we're joined by Taiwan Greenpeace Oceans campaigner Yan Ning. Yan Ning, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi.
So Greenpeace actually caught one of Taiwan's fishing vessels in the act earlier this year, back in early September. Greenpeace activists boarded the Shunde Qing 888. So can you tell us a little bit about what they found?
When we went on board of Shunde Qing 888, we found there is discrepancy between the logbook and real catch. And we also found nearly 100 kilo of shark fins on board. Also, through the interview, the captain and the crew admit they transshipment at sea without permission. So
kind of three different infractions there. Let's break that down a little bit for our listeners. Let's start with the one that's probably the easiest for our listeners to understand, the shark fins. So they had a big amount of shark fins in their hull, and that's an illegal thing for them to be catching and carrying. Is that right?
Yes. Under the conservation and management measures of Western and Central Pacific Ocean, you cannot, fishing vessels cannot do shark finning at sea, and you have to keep the fins with the body when you catch shark. So obviously, this captain, they are against the law. Mm-hmm.
And let's just so our listeners can understand, let's talk about those other two infractions. So there was a discrepancy in the logbook. Why would that be a concern?
It is important for all fishing vessels to report their real catch to the authority. Then the scientists and the regional fisheries management organization can know how much fish still left at sea, and so they can do proper scientific management and monitor. So if you didn't report it back, then it belongs one of the illegal activity.
Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of related to the other issue that you found, that they were transferring their catches to other ships. You were telling me before the interview that also makes it difficult to know how much fish these ships are catching.
Yes, under the regulation, if fishing vessel wants to transfer their catch at sea, they have to apply it first and to get permission. And all the transshipment should be taken under observer's record. So if you didn't do this, you mainly break the law, and nobody knows those illegal catch goes where.
So this is kind of the main incident that's gotten a lot of news in Taiwan. A lot of people have been focusing on this. And this is the thing that I think has really pushed the EU to make these stronger statements. But Greenpeace is saying that this may just be the tip of the iceberg. There may be a lot more of this kind of illegal activity going on in Taiwan's fishing fleet. So can you tell us a little bit more about the broader issue here? What are you worried is happening out there?
Taiwan is one of the distant water fishing powers in the world. Taiwan has the most number of longliners in Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. But compared to this amount of big fleets, the capacity of the authority is not enough to manage effectively. And so because the fishing fleets are so many, so it's easy for you to imagine that sometimes there is illegal activity, and it's very difficult to monitor at sea.
And help us understand what the real consequences are here. So basically the concern would be that these fishers are getting too many fish or are going to have a real negative impact on the ecosystem in the oceans. Is that really what we're worried about here?
Yeah, one of the main threats to the ocean is overfishing. So when we talk about the tuna stock, like the sashimi tuna, we usually eat the big eye tuna and yellowfin tuna. They are both overfished at Pacific Ocean. So if we cannot manage our fishing capacity, that means we cannot manage how many vessels we want to stay at sea, or how much fishing effort we want to put. It will be difficult for us to stop the overfishing crisis.
And let's focus for a second, because in this incident, really the thing that caught people's attention is the shark catch. So what kind of a danger is that posing to the shark population out there in the waters?
Sharks are the keystone species at the ocean. So shark is at the top of the food chain. So once the shark stock decrease, that will threaten the whole ocean ecosystem. Yeah, but the price of shark fins are much higher than shark bodies. So it's easier for fishermen to cut the fins because it's smaller and the price is higher.
All right. So basically, in looking at the way that this case was handled, Greenpeace has some concerns with the way that the Taiwan government responded to this specific case. And there was a government response. They suspended the ship's license for 8 months, and they also fined it 150,000 NT. But you're saying that that's not enough?
Yeah, it's. I think from the judge of the fisheries agency, we cannot see what kind of standard they use to punish this vessel. Why 8 months or not 1 year, and why 150,000 NT dollars? Because compared to the illegal catch, the price of compared to the price of illegal catch, 150,000 NT dollars is pretty low to prevent this situation happen again in the future. So according to EU's suggestion, the penalty should be at least 5 times over the price of illegal catch. Then you can effectively prevent this kind of illegal fishing happen in the future.
Right. So basically what's happened since then is the European Commission has issued what they're calling a yellow card to Taiwan, and they're saying basically Taiwan has 6 months to clean up its act here, and if it's not able to do that, then it could face some serious trade sanctions. And as we've kind of already discussed, fishing is a pretty big industry for Taiwan, so this could really hit Taiwan where it hurts. So help us understand, what are the kind of changes that the EU is going to be looking for Taiwan to make in the next 6 months?
EU is the biggest seafood consumption place in the world, so they are very concerned about the legality of the seafood. So that's why they want to cooperate with different countries to improve the traceability and also the fisheries management. So when they issue this yellow card, they want Taiwan to improve the fisheries management in the next 6 months. And the main suggestion is to revise the current fisheries law largely, like increase the penalty and also revise the framework of the whole fisheries law.
So you've already kind of discussed the issue with the penalties and you saying that they need to be increased. Let's go into that framework that you were just talking about. What are the issues with the laws as you see them?
Right now, the current fisheries law, they are very old. The law itself is very old, and it lacks of the basic definition, like distant water fishing, what kind of fishery it is, and where does these vessels operate, and what kind of target do they catch. We don't have this kind of information in the main law. And also, there is no vision of what kind of fishing capacity is Taiwan going to develop? Like in 5 years or 10 years, how many vessels are we going to have, or are we going to cut in the future? Because most captains are about 60 years old, so maybe 10 years later, the whole landscape of fishery will change a lot. But in the current law, we don't have that kind of vision, and we don't have that kind of management plan in the law.
So it sounds like what this is all kind of aimed at is setting some level for how many fish we think it's okay for Taiwan's fishers to catch, and making sure that we have the capacity to keep it at that level.
Yeah, and also there is no indication of how can we use the scientific suggestion or the precautional principle to use some ecosystem-based measures to evaluate the fish stock, and how do we manage and how do we review the performance. This is what's missing in the current law.
Now, Taiwan's government, as I said earlier in the interview, they have committed to increasing the penalties. And they've also, in some of the statements that they've released, they've said that they are very committed to adhering to some of these principles of making sure that they manage the fish stock out there, and they manage these vessels that are out there. And they've said that they are working to be a good partner in this effort. But Greenpeace has said that you have some concerns about whether or not the government will be able to make these goals in the next 6 months. So tell us about that.
From our experience before, the attitude of Taiwan government is not very positive. Like in the some RFMO, the Regional Fisheries Management Organization, they don't provide some operational data to the body because they think it will threaten our fishery. But actually, those data should be public available, because scientists can do better monitor and evaluate. And also the NGO like Greenpeace or Pew or WWF can also give their effort to the government to have a better management suggestion.
So basically, you're hoping that they'll be more open to partnering with environmental groups like yours.
Yes, and also more transparent for the data and more public participation in the process.
So what do you think it would take for them to meet these goals and make the kind of changes that they need to in the next 6 months?
I think first the attitude should be changed a lot, because you have to cooperate positively with EU and to revise the law quickly, because 6 months is really short, and you have to send it to Legislative Yuan when the session begins at February. So the time is really short. So if we don't have a plan now, and it will be difficult for EU to take off the yellow card in 6 months.
So your group is actually making efforts right now. You're actually promoting some of the changes that you would like to see with academics and various groups around Taiwan. Is that right?
Yeah, we think it's very difficult for fisheries agency to solve the problem on their own. So we also develop a recommendation on distant water fishery, and we are sharing our recommendation with academics, NGO, and legislators. We want more people to take care of this issue, and we can work with fisheries agency together.
And so just looking forward, what would the perfect system look like in your opinion? I mean, of course, there's international concern about overfishing and the impact that we're having on the ocean. Do you think that it's possible for Taiwan to have its fishing system in such a way that it'll have a balance, and there will be sustainability in the ways that it does its fishing?
Of course, I think it's possible. Like South Korea and Philippines, they both got yellow card in last year or the year before last year, but they also revised their fisheries law quickly in 6 months, and then EU just took off the yellow card, and they revised the fisheries law largely, like increase the penalty and also make clear definition of all the fisheries and give different kind of penalty to different size of fishing fleets. So I think it's possible for Taiwan to move, and we also look forward to cooperate with the fisheries agency.
All right, we have been speaking today to Yan Ning of Greenpeace. She is Greenpeace's Oceans campaigner in Taiwan. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening to another podcast edition of Taiwan Talk, our weekly series of interviews from and about Taiwan. For ICRT, I'm Keith Manconi.